Good morning, everyone. I'm Professor Shireen Moti. I'm the Assistant Professor of Law at OP Jindal Global University. I'm also the Chairperson for CASHEL. I extend a very warm welcome to all of you to the 13th CASHEL webinar on all about the LLM program at Seattle University. We are delighted to have our distinguished guest speaker, Mr. Nicholas Greenlee, with us today for today's webinar. He's the Associate Director, Graduate in International Programs, Seattle University School of Law. The Committee for Academic Support on Higher Education helps students at Jindal as well as alumni to achieve their higher education dreams. We are a set of faculty members who have pursued and completed our Masters in Law degrees and Master in Public Policy from top universities in foreign countries. Therefore, we are in a position to advise and guide students when it comes to their application processes. And we have had many successes in the past 2 years. I would like to introduce Mr. Nicholas Greenlee before I welcome him for his opening remarks. Mr. Greenlee received his BA in Political Science from Northwest University, where he also worked as a Senior Immigration Advisor and Assistant Director in the International Education Department. He received his MA in Global Affairs and Policy, and after a brief stint at Amazon, joined the Seattle University School of Law as an Associate Director of Graduate and International Programs and Designated School Official. He offers consulting services for design, marketing, and recruitment. In his free time, he also teaches self-defense classes. Welcome, Mr. Greenlee. I invite you for the opening remarks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Professor. And thank you, everyone here. It's great to be here. I look forward to answering any questions that we may have about the LLM programs at Seattle University, but also about just answering questions about law schools in general and LLM programs in general, as well as any questions that may come up about immigration and student visas and things like that. So thank you very much for having me, Professor.
Wonderful, Nicholas. So I have with me Professor Simran, Bhinder, who's also the member of CASHEL, and she's an assistant professor at OP Jindal Global University. She will be taking up the Q&A session towards the last leg of this webinar. So I request all the attendees to use the Q&A feature to send us your questions. And there are some questions that we have received on email that we're going to take up. The way this webinar is structured is that for the next 35-40 minutes, we are going to enter an interactive discussion about covering all the aspects of the application process for the Seattle University. And then towards the last 15-20 minutes, we'll invite questions from the attendees, which Professor Simran will take up. So my first question to you, Nicholas, is what should the prospective applicants consider when applying for the LLM program at US law schools? So typically, what are these factors that any prospective LLM applicant should look at before shortlisting universities? Because you can't apply to all universities, you might apply to a set of 5 or 10 universities. What are the indicators that matter the most and which students should take into consideration?
Thank you for that question. Excellent question, of course. One of the first things that a lot of students want to consider is rank, right? For some students, rank is very important. And in that case, it's quite simple to choose from there which schools you want to apply to if rank is your is the most important thing for you. But for some students, rank is either not as important or it's lower on the tier. Right. So then there's other factors that are involved, things like location, right? And with location comes opportunity. So I've had some students come to me after they've graduated from a school in the US and they graduated from a school in Oklahoma. And I said, well, why did you go to Oklahoma? And they said, well, I got a very large scholarship from Oklahoma. And I said, great. Did you enjoy your time in Oklahoma? And they said, no, because there was nothing there. So in thinking about not just how much is something going to cost, but where are you going to be living? Where are you going to be networking? Where are you hopefully going to be working, right? And I'm speaking generally about LLM programs. Of course, I'm at Seattle University. So for me, the first thought is, well, Seattle University is close to Amazon, close to Microsoft, close to Google, and we have all these networking opportunities. We're in big tech. We're in the Pacific Northwest, things like that. So, but for other schools, if students are considering New York, right, that's also a great location. That location is very important because it is where your network is going to be. and meeting people in person, especially in law, is so necessary to be able to make the connections that you're going to have later on down the road. Of course, cost, right? Cost is something that you have to keep in mind, and relative costs and fixed costs and all these, cost of living, all of these different things. Can you get scholarship from that institution? What is the percentage of tuition that your scholarship is for? And then of course, the type of law, right? If you want to study IP or technology law, are you going to go to a place that focuses on international law? Probably not, right? And you want, as alongside that, who are the professors and what are they teaching? Are they someone that you would like to work with later on down the road? And finally, the last important thing, right, is not just thinking about what happens during your degree, but what happens after your degree, right? Do you want to do OPT? Do you want to continue on and do like an SJD program, right, that would allow you to be more of a professor in your home country, which Seattle University has, right? So for us, that's an option, but for some schools, that's not an option. So if that's something that you want to do, you need to be thinking about that before you apply to that school, right? So I would say all of those things together, you don't just want to focus on one, you want to focus on all of them together. And as rationally as you can, right? We're talking to prospective lawyers, as rationally as you can, make the case to yourself, why is this the best thing for me?
Absolutely. Those are some brilliant points and indicators that students should look at, prospective applicants should look at. But sometimes they get blinded by the rankings or the scholarships that they're offered from any university or any law school in US, because they just want to move abroad and they just want a program which doesn't cost much. But they don't understand that that is going to cost them their future, because people who are similarly placed in that LLM year in some other university will bag all the key opportunities just because of the location and because they had more exposure. And when they were pursuing the LLM, they were not only focusing on the academic part of it, but also building their network in that process of that year. That is very important. So location does play a key role, and Seattle is situated in a place where students have that opportunity to sort of go out and build their network, and actually that will culminate into an internship, externship, or a job opportunity later on, hopefully. And also the experience of doing an LLM and is not just about being academic about it, but also being able to interact with people from different cultures. So that really builds your personality, and probably a university which is placed at the center would give you more opportunities as opposed to a very remote location. Then I come to my next question. What are the various LLM specializations that Seattle University offers to its students? I mean, you have touched upon the fact that, specialization is a key sort of indicator or a key factor while deciding about the LLM application, about the law school itself, because it will give you exposure to the best faculty members in the world. So what are those specializations that a prospective applicant can opt for if they apply to Seattle Law School?
Yeah, so we have two, and we really try to leverage our strengths, right? We don't try to be all things to all people. For us, our strength is one, in our location, right? Where we are in our proximity to big tech. As well as two, as you alluded to, our international presence, and the fact that Seattle is really an international hub now. It's one of the SeaTac Airport, or Seattle Airport, is one of the most heavily trafficked international airports in the United States. So our first LLM is an LLM in American Legal Studies. And this LLM is primarily for foreign trained lawyers who want to come to the US, who want to learn about the US legal system, and then after that want to take the bar. And they may want to take the bar exam in in Washington State. They may want to take it in New York. They may want to take it in California. Really, any state they're able to take it from. But that LLM specifically is designed to help those foreign lawyers who don't have a robust understanding of the US legal system, right? They're lawyers already, right? They're trained, they know how to parse legal concepts. They have great academics, but they need that extra bit of content in order to be able to take the bar exam, which is so heavily focused on the US legal system, right? I always tell students, imagine an American student, usually a law student, takes 3 years at minimum for a JD degree, and then they take the bar, and some of them don't pass. So imagine an LLM student who's coming in, who is condensing all of that into a year, right? It is very condensed, and having a robust LLM program that is solely dedicated to getting you those bare minimum amount of knowledge that you need in order to pass the bar is really important. So that's one of our LLMs. That's one of our specializations. The second one focuses on the tech aspect. So it's an LLM in technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And it's really geared towards both domestic students, American students who want to really raise the bar for themselves in terms of their tech knowledge, but also for foreign trained lawyers who want to come and get that exposure to things like data security, cybersecurity, IP, right, intellectual property law, etc. All those things. In addition, students can take the bar if they take an additional credits related to the American legal system on top of the tech credits. So it's a bit complicated because the Washington State Bar Association, for example, requires a certain amount of courses dedicated to the American legal system. So for the tech LLM, you would need 16 tech credits. You would need 8 elective credits, some of those which can go to American legal principles, and then you can finish the American legal principles requirement with a few more credits, and then you can graduate with a tech LLM and sit for the bar. So what I'm trying to say, it's a little complicated, but what I'm trying to say is that it's possible to sit for the bar with either. And the question is, the question for the student is, if you want to do tech, will you have enough credits where you feel comfortable taking the bar, right? Because the bar is difficult and it requires a lot of knowledge. And that's something for the student to decide. But those are our two main specializations. And of course, the professors that teach those courses are world-class faculty. And so if you're looking, as you mentioned earlier, Professor, if you're looking for a network, that's the place to start, right? Is networking with these people who are experts in the field, world-renowned. Yeah.
That is very exciting. I feel like I want to do another LLM with
Please
law
do.
and technology.
Come join us.
I feel, with all the new AI applications coming in the market, every day we are listening about new things. It will be so exciting to go back and read about it and what the regulatory and legal mechanisms can be to control the AI, because that's so topical right now. And I think a law and tech LLM is going to really launch a lot of careers, I feel now. And I routinely advise my students that if you are looking at doing an LLM, I think law and technology is a stream you should consider, considering that a lot of innovation is happening in different parts of the world. There's a culture of, we are in the AI generation now, and it would be good to have people who dedicate that 1 year in understanding what technology is and how do you apply law to technology, because law is essentially nothing but you need to apply it to something for it to have meaning. So that is very interesting.
And we're very fortunate in that, speaking to our network, one of our professors who teaches the IP law, she just wrote an amicus brief for the U.S. Supreme Court. I can't even remember exactly what it was, but it had something to do with AI, I believe. And then we also just had the general counsel of Amazon at the law school for a meet and greet and a talk, which was fabulous. And of course, his network is vast in the area as well. So again, not only the content, which is wonderful and great, and it will do wonders for your career moving forward, but also who are the people that you get to shake hands with and make connections with, and it's invaluable.
Absolutely. I mean, the exposure seems to be enormous considering that it's the hub of where everything is taking place. It would be nice to be there and sort of see what's actually happening on the ground and absorb as much as you can during that year. And the second aspect about being prepared for the bar exam, that is also quite crucial. So I mean, students have to plan, of course, their own academic schedules and how are they going to appear for the bar. But the fact that you can and you'll be eligible to do that is great, because that would be really instrumental in them designing their careers going forward, whatever their short-term or long-term goals might be. Then the next question is a more practical question, which many of our students want to know about, is that if they are thinking of applying to the Seattle Law School for the LLM program, what are the different application materials? What are the different deadlines, the intake, and really what is the admissions committee looking at when they look at a prospective applicant, and if there are any scholarships that are available for Indian students?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So the application process, as you can imagine, the application process for JD students is very rigorous, right, in the United States. And that's partly a legacy thing, and that's partly just because the JD programs are governed by the American Bar Association and very heavily regulated. LLM programs, some of them also have difficult applications, right? For us, we're not concerned with making our application process difficult. Why would we do that? You've already been through law school. You've already, gone through all of this bureaucracy. For us, it's important. We want to know about you. So when I see your application materials, I want to be able to look at it and say, okay, I feel like I've got a good idea of who this student is and what they want to do and what they're going to do with their degree, right? A plan that they have. So let me tell you about the basic application materials, and then we can talk about scholarships and things. For Seattle University School of Law, for an LLM program, we need the basic admissions application, which is a very short form. It won't take you very long. The thing that will take you a little bit longer is the statement of purpose. Okay, the statement of purpose is just that. I want to hear what your purpose is. I don't want to hear things like, oh, well, I'm interested in this area of law, but I don't know, maybe I won't be interested in that later. Maybe I'd want to go do this. That's not focus. That's not helping me understand you. I really want to understand, even if you're not exactly sure yet what you want to do, think of something that is robust that you might want to do. And then if it changes later on, great, we support you. But, I just got a statement of purpose today from a student who said, look, he's from India. He said, I want to take my degree. This is what I'm going to study. I'm going to take it back to India, and I'm going to use that degree to do these 3 things in my home province. And that to me is exactly what I'm looking for, because I want to see that you can think down the road and have an idea of what you're going to do with that degree. So the statement of purpose, I would say, is key. Okay, perhaps more key than the rest of it. You don't need to stress out about it, right? Trust yourself. You know how to write. You're law students. So trust yourself, but come up with something robust, okay? And then the next thing would be a resume or a CV, which you probably have already. You don't need to worry about formatting it in a certain way, right? I'm not an employer. I'm just looking to see, what have you done before? What are you currently doing? And then if you're from JGLS, then we don't need a letter of recommendation from you. We trust JGLS Global University, but if you're not from JGLS, anybody who's listening who may not be, then usually we would require a recommendation from a professor. And then official transcripts, right? Or unofficial are okay for admission purposes, but eventually official transcripts from your institution. And on some application materials, you'll see that there's a TOEFL requirement, but again, for JGLS, we wouldn't require that because you've done your studies in English, okay? So all of those things, and again, Professor Moti will have access to all of these things, and I can send them to you as well so that you can see the full list. It's not overly bureaucratic. Again, I want to know you, and I want to know about you and your plans for the future. That's the most important thing. So really quickly pivoting to scholarships. Every student who submits an application is automatically considered for a merit scholarship. Okay. That can range in value. Again, it's merit, right? It depends on what I'm seeing in the CV, what I'm seeing in the statement of purpose, what I'm seeing in the letter of recommendation, right? And then besides the merit scholarship, we have another scholarship specifically for students from India, and it's called the Ramallah Scholarship. So the Ramallah family, Mr. Ramallah was the first Indian lawyer at Microsoft, and he has generously donated a full scholarship for a student from India. Now, what I need to tell you is that scholarship, we've almost made decisions on those. Okay, we're probably making a decision on those in the next week or two. So if you're interested in applying, I can send the application materials to Professor Moti, and we can see if we can get your application in quickly. If not for this year, right? Some of you are thinking 2 or 3 years later on down the road. Keep that in mind. That will probably be available for future years as well. And we're always networking and developing more scholarships as well. So there may be more opportunities in the future, but those are our main 2 scholarships right now.
That's very encouraging for prospective applicants, especially from India, that you have these scholarships, and generously you're actually considering everyone for a merit scholarship. That is also very, very generous of Seattle Law School. And with the state, I mean, the application materials, you've described them beautifully, that what is it that is required and what you should be mentioning in the statement of purpose. But I think the crux of everything is clarity and being honest about your own profile and about your intention. Because if intention is clear, it will be reflected in your statement of purpose as well. So where are you from? What is your background? Why do you want to pursue an LLM at this stage of your career? Why an LLM from Seattle Law School? What are your short-term and long-term goals, and how is this LLM degree going to help you achieve those goals? All of that should be reflected in the statement of purpose, and I think that's great. Also, it's very kind of Seattle Law School to relax these 2 requirements for Jindal Global Law School, and I think students are going to be benefited from it immensely when it comes to letter of recommendation and also the English language requirement. So now, Nicholas, my question to you is that, of course, these are all the application materials and there's an application process, but what are these do's and don'ts that one should keep in mind while applying for the LLM program? Maybe one thing that students should absolutely be careful of avoiding, and the other one which they should be absolutely focused on.
That's a great question. I think what they should be focused on most, and again, I'm speaking about Seattle University, but keep this in mind for any school to which you apply. I think, well, let me start with what you shouldn't do. Please don't be rude. I mean it like this. I have a lot of students who will email, say, my assistant. And they will email, and then the next day they will email again, and the next day they will email again. They have all these follow-up questions. You have to understand that admissions people are human, right? Admissions people in all the law schools across the United States, they have very busy jobs, and they're dealing with a lot of different students. So I'm telling you, one of the best things you can do is to be kind to them. And that is just across the board. It will get you much farther than you can imagine in US law schools. As someone who works in the process and works alongside many different admissions people, being kind and being professional, right? You're either lawyers or you will be lawyers very soon. Being professional in your conduct will get you a long way. Not just, I mean, this is just practice, right? In working with admissions officers, but we're talking about careers, right? We're talking about future employers. Professionalism, especially around this area in the United States, is one of the highest values and virtues here. So I would say practice that, right? Learn how to write an email and learn how to communicate well with your advisor. The second thing that I would say is be sure to follow all of the instructions as they're laid out to you. I know that it can be confusing for students when they're applying to 5 different law schools and everybody has a different idea of how you should apply, right? Seattle University will take a PDF via email. This university wants you to apply via LSAC. This university wants you to send in hard copies, right? Everybody's got a different process and it can be really confusing. But as much as you can, even if you have to, do one at a time, right? You don't have to do all of them at once. Follow the instructions, because that is going to make the life of the admissions officer a lot easier. And it's going to mean that your application is going to be processed in a timely manner. I can't tell you how many applications are delayed on my end because I get, an application where the statement of purpose is missing. And then I have to email you back and I have to say, well, I need, or my assistant does, I need this. And then you have to send it back to them and then everything is delayed, right? So being professional, kind, and following the instructions, I know it sounds simple, but it's some of the best things that you can do to increase your chances of being heard and having your application being seen.
That's very valuable advice, and we can't be kinder and empathetic enough to people with busy jobs. And of course, either the applicants are lawyers or they're going to be lawyers, and therefore, these are just basics that everybody should follow: professionalism and also following the instructions. And I am completely on board with the fact that it might seem easy to follow instructions, but it's not always the easiest thing to do. And every year you might be getting applications where it's clear that somebody has followed the instructions, which makes your job easy. And actually that's what's required. And then there are no delays. And then there's a different set of people who have just not followed the instructions. So that's really valuable advice, Nicholas. So the next question is with respect to what are these different, and you touched upon it a little bit in the beginning, with respect to the various internships, externships, job opportunities that are available to students after completing the LLM at Seattle Law School. So what are these different plethora of opportunities that students can explore?
I think this is everybody's favorite question because everyone wants to know how they're going to get a job, right? So let's start with externships because that's probably the easiest question for me to answer. So externships, we have an externship office at Seattle University School of Law, and their entire job is just to go around to different employers and secure externships for our students. We have externships in so many different places, not even just in the US, but across the world, right? And we're constantly cultivating a greater network that is going to get us more of those. So we're talking things like clerkships for judges. We've got some private firms that we work with. We're working at trying to get into some of the tech places, although those can be pretty siloed. There's so many different opportunities, and we have a whole database. So once you're a student, you can actually go in and look at this database and just scroll through and see all the different opportunities that are available. And you might say, well, I want to work at Google someday, right? I want to be a lawyer at Google, but if I can't get an externship there, well, then what do I do? Here's what I would say is you don't have to start at Google, right? Your work, starting at even clerking for a judge, right, will get you the experience that you need, not only in law, but in professionalism, in learning what expectations are, is going to prepare you for that next step. And maybe that next step is working at a private firm. And maybe the step after that is getting a job in tech somewhere. So the externships are available. I want you to keep in mind that, as an LLM student, your schedule is going to be very packed with courses, and courses are going to be the most important part of your time and your study, right? So participating in an externship, everybody wants to do it, and that's great. But if you're doing the tech LLM and you want to sit for the bar, you're probably not going to have a lot of time to take an extra 6 credits for an externship, because you do need to take credits with it. So keep that in mind, right? let's talk about work opportunities for pay, because externships, especially for international students, are not paid. Okay. And it's not only international students. Most American students do not get paid for externships. And that has been an American Bar Association requirement for a long time. They've recently relaxed some of those rules, but most of them still don't get paid. For international students, thinking about what is it that you're going to be able to, where are you going to be able to work, right? You can work on campus up to 20 hours a week, okay? That could be in the cafeteria, that could be as a research assistant, anything on campus. Per visa regulations, you're allowed to do, okay? There are other options, and I know a lot of, prospective lawyers or current lawyers are probably listening right now, and you've probably done your research and you've heard things like CPT and OPT. So let's talk about that really quick. CPT, usually for a graduate program, you would be able to do that after your first year of study. The problem with this is that an LLM is 1 year, right? So once you're done with that year, then normally you'd be eligible for CPT, but your program ends after 1 year. So we're going to set CPT to the side because CPT doesn't really, it's not applicable in this situation. OPT is applicable, okay? You finish your degree, you have 1 year. If you're approved by the US government, you have 1 year to work and work in an area related to your program of study. So if you can find an employer that is willing to take you as someone who's on OPT work authorization, then you're able to work in the US for up to a year. And then after that, you can make the choice, right? Maybe the employer wants to sponsor you for H-1B, or maybe you decide you're going to go back to India and you're going to work there for a while, and then hopefully your company will transfer you back to the US. Or maybe you want to do an SJD degree, right? And that's a degree level change, and then you can stay in the US for another 3 to 5 years, right? There are options afterwards, but OPT is the most common thing for students.
Thank you for explaining that so beautifully. And I mean, technical stuff was also there, but you were able to sort of navigate us through that CPT and OPT. And I'm sure that students must be researching about these things, and these are important considerations even before applying for the LLM program, because that makes it a compelling case at the end of it, and it comes across in your application materials. And in terms of why are you even pursuing this LLM, there has to be some sort of objective. Maybe it can be a purely academic pursuit. Maybe it can be something that increases your job opportunities, not only in the US, but back in India also, because to enter academia in India, you need an LLM degree. And it's highly valued if you do it from a law school such as the Seattle Law School. So I think that is very important. Also today, what is happening in the Indian legal market, so to speak, is that everybody, I mean, mostly law graduates who are coming out of law schools now are opting to do an LLM. That was not the case 5 or 10 years back, because I think it's the influence of the peer group that everybody ends up applying for the LLM program. Or it's also the fact that, specialization is something, though we are generalists mostly in India, but when it comes to specializations, that's something that is attracting law graduates today. So they want to be specialists even before they enter the profession. So freshers are generally applying more for the LLM programs, because later on, once you are in the legal profession, it becomes very difficult to take a 1 year break and go and study abroad and come back, because you might have a practice that is running and flourishing, or you might have taken up a job where you are excelling. So these are great considerations to keep in mind, whether you want to take the bar exam or not, whether you want to do an externship or not, whether you want to stay in the US or and then pursue the SJD after that, or you want to come back and use all of those experiences that you have garnered in that year as an LLM student and apply it to your prospective career in India, because India is also a very flourishing market now. And there are, I mean, this is highly valued if you have a foreign degree. because you learn so many different things. You learn networking, you learn professionalism, you learn about a new legal system, and a lot of cross-border work keeps happening between India and US. So it's good to have some kind of knowledge, at least base knowledge of the US legal system, given the fact that maybe you're dealing with clients in the US as an Indian lawyer in a firm or in your own practice. So those are great things to know about, Nicholas. And now I will hand it over to my colleague, Professor Bhinder, who will ask questions that have been posed to us on email or through the Q&A chat by the attendees. Over to you, Professor Bhinder.
Thank you so much, Professor Shireen, and thank you so much, Nicholas. This was so informative. I think I'm sure my students have learned a lot from this. Even I have learned a lot. So thank you so much. And, especially the point about not being rude. I think the first mail they shoot off to you and the second mail is sent to us, telling us to wave some magic wand and get an answer for them. So I think that's very important. And I also, really, it was very interesting to actually have someone, outside of our office as well, speak about how, it's not just the blitz of what your ranking is as an institute when you're looking to your LLM, right? You need to find a program that works the best for you. And that's what I often tell my students, that, when I look back at my LLM, it's not only, where I went and what it adds to my, to the wall in my house when I display a diploma from that university. It's also about what I was taught. Because after getting a job, you excel in your job based on your experience. We often forget that law degrees are not just, the end term goal isn't just to get a diploma, it's actually to learn the law as well.
Right.
And that depends on who's teaching you. So thank you so much for all of that. And now we have a few questions. So one question that our students often ask us is, right, it's about how well regarded is an LLM versus a JD. Because a lot of Indian students, they complete their BA, LLB programs or their LLB programs. And once they're looking for a degree abroad, especially in the US, they're very conflicted about whether they should do an LLM or they should go in for a JD. That does require them to do a few more undergraduate courses as well. But that would, often they want to know if that would give them maybe a better, shot at getting a job in the US. So, just in terms of the job market, which is better regarded?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it goes back to your point about, are you learning the law or are you trying to get a degree, right? And for a lot of our graduates, right, who are able to learn the law in an LLM degree and take the bar, right? The bar being really the most important thing, right, is can you actually practice the law? And then from there, do you have the network that you need in order to get your foot in the door so that you can start practicing law? And then the question after that is, are you practicing the law well enough, right, that the fact that you don't have a JD doesn't matter anymore? And for a lot of students, it doesn't matter anymore. Once you've got your foot in the door, once you have passed the bar, and once you're practicing law and your supervisor or, the partner at the law firm sees, oh, well, they really know what they're doing, they're not looking at your degree anymore, right? The one caveat I would say is that, if it's a US institution that is trying to hire you as a professor, then yes, perhaps the JD is going to carry some more weight. And that's because they look specifically at degrees, right? But even then, it's not a given, and there's some give and take there. So I wouldn't stress out too much about it, and I would focus, especially if you're trying to be a practitioner of the law, focus on, like as you mentioned, Professor, learning the law and then applying it, right? Yeah.
No, thank you so much. I think that's something that we often try to tell our students about. I think another question that a lot of our students have emailed us about is actually about, the visa requirements and how they function. And over here, what they specifically want to know is what are their chances of maybe, being able to, one is you secure a job while you're still studying, and maybe your employer can help you with the visa requirements and everything else that an international student would need to make that transition. But a lot of them are also inquiring about the kind of time periods that there are wherein they can stay in the US and maybe look for a job and secure that. So if you could give us any insight on that.
Yeah, so it's tricky. It's more difficult for an LLM student, right? Because the time is crunched.
Yeah.
If you were coming for a PhD degree, then you could, start using CPT part-time for pretty much after the first year for the next 4 years, right? And then after that, you can do OPT for a year. So, and if you're doing STEM, right, if you're in an engineering degree, then you can do OPT for 3 years, right? So for other types of students, it's a little easier. For LLM students who are in a 1-year program, right, with CPT not really being applicable, then the question is really about OPT, right? And that is, it's 1 year, and you have about 60 days after you're approved for OPT to find a job. Okay, they call that the grace period. Okay. And that's the amount of time that you really have to figure that out. Once you have OPT, right, if you have an employer that's willing to sponsor you for H-1B, well, then you got to go through the H-1B process, and that can take a long time, and that can be frustrating. Another option, right, is to do something like an SJD or do another LLM so that you can continue keeping your status as an F1 international student. Another option for you, right, is to go back to India and then to be sponsored to come work in the US with an Indian company. That's a different type of thing. So are there options? Yes. You just have to be proactive and be thinking about what is my next step and where do I want to be? And if that doesn't work out, you have to have a contingency plan, right? If you don't get approved for OPT, you have to know what you're going to do next, especially if you want to stay here.
Yeah, no, of course. And again, that's something that's very, very important, because there's a considerable investment of time, energy, and effort that goes into getting a postgraduate degree, especially of a subject or an area such as the law. So I feel it's always better to have a plan B, and if you're like me, then also a plan C and a plan D. And I think one more thing that a lot of our students are often confused about is the admission cycle of US law schools. And therein, a lot of law schools sometimes have rolling admissions. Most of them, of course, have one admission cycle, and then that's it. So if you could just tell us a little bit more about the Seattle admission cycle.
Yeah, so very briefly, the JD cycle, the JD admission cycle in the United States is notoriously challenging, right, and very strict. And that's just the nature of the JD degree. So if any of you were ever interested in pursuing, for example, we have a global accelerated JD program wherein a student can come and use 1 year. We basically transfer 1 year of their LLB, transfer it to Seattle University, and then take 2 more years and then finish with a JD. That is also an option for students if they're interested in that. But those types of cycles tend to be far more strict, and the deadlines are strict, and the admissions criteria are far more strict. And again, that's partly because there are reporting requirements for the American Bar Association that law schools are required to report. For LLMs, most programs tend to be a little more flexible, right? And for our program, again, I'm not trying to stress people out with my application process. My concern when I put a priority deadline down, it's flexible in that you can apply after the priority deadline, which is technically May 15th, right? That is our priority deadline for the LLM. For students interested in applying, that's the priority deadline. It's flexible, but the reason that I put a priority deadline is because of the visa issue. And right now we're seeing a lot of delays in particularly Delhi. It's taking a long time, sometimes 50 days, sometimes more than that for a student to get a visa appointment. And I don't like to do that too close to the program start, because number one, it can stress you as the student out. And number two, if it is serious enough, then you may not be able to start on time for the program. So I try to get international students to apply as quickly as possible. And to that end, we actually are accepting applications for next year at the same time as we're accepting applications for the current year. So if students are interested in applying early for 2024, partly into 2025, we're willing to consider applications for that even now.
Oh, perfect. And I think it's great that you have a priority date, because that will help students figure out, or at least plan when they can apply, right? Without having this looming threat of a deadline and then really working in stress and maybe even messing up their applications. And so for all our students listening out there, early bird gets the seat. Please do make sure to plan these things in advance. And finally, just one more question. And again, a lot of students do end up asking us this is, how we spoke about you have to be more than just what you're studying, right? And where your law school is. So how is it studying in a city like Seattle? And what do you think our students are going to gain outside of the classroom, in your opinion, once they choose to do this program?
Yeah, well, I can speak to, I grew up here, right? I love this city. In terms of weather, in terms of nature, in terms of climate, there's nothing that beats it. It's mild weather with, in any direction, you can find mountains for skiing, you can find desert, you can find beach, you can find anything that you, rainforest, there's everything around here. For me, it's a place of solitude. It's a place where I enjoy being. I think that students would be able to enjoy the urban lifestyle of Seattle, but also, take a car ride 20 minutes away and you're in the middle of nature, right? And you're in a very isolated spot, not a lot of people. So I think that there's a cultural life here, a vibrancy, but also there's a fast-paced, there's a vigor to life here, right? We're in the heart of tech. We really are. Amazon, Microsoft, Google are literally right down the street. I have friends that work in all of them because we grew up here, right? We're in this area. So there's this vibrancy to life here, and there's a lot of youth. It's a young city. And I think for those that are interested in studying law and being on the cutting edge, there's almost no better place. I mean, we're up there with New York. These really are the places to be studying right now.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think especially students from Jindal would be able to relate to this whole understanding of being somewhere which gives you the opportunity to, take a drive out and be in a slightly more different setting, because I think we are practically the opposite. I think we live in a more laid back town, but we are just 20 minutes away from the capital, that's Delhi. So I
hope to visit someday. I really do.
We would love to host you and maybe have an in-office session, and then, I think that would be really great. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for taking out the time, being here and answering all these questions. I'm sure that a lot of our students are going to reach out to you over LinkedIn as well, and continue this conversation there. So thank you so much for this. And
of course, thank you both professors. I do appreciate your time.
Thank you, Nicholas. We can't thank you enough for being here and sharing such valuable information with our students. And I hopefully think that a lot of the Jindal students and students across India would be willing to apply for the Seattle Law School LLM program. And now they know the nitty-gritties of the application process, which is going to make it super easy for them to apply to the program. Otherwise, also, we think we can keep we'll keep conducting these informative sessions before the application deadlines every year, so that students who are interested in that particular cohort get to know about this information firsthand from you. Thank you so much. And any closing remarks, Nicholas?
No, I just want to say thank you so much. And if there are any students that are interested, I'm happy to schedule Zoom calls with them individually as well. So feel free to reach out. And even if they'd like to speak about, other law schools or the student visa process, anything, however I can be of help, I'm available.
That's very generous of you. And thank you, Professor Simran, also for being here. The webinar for today has ended. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.